All right, all right. Good enough for the likes of him. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and do a. I brought up the concept of Axial-Theism along with all of the, the experiential realism on that video where I'm going through experiential realism, the varieties of idealism. I aired out the idea of axial theism as well, to kind of, um, follow through with all of that. This is how it kind of follows through into some way of trying to interpret theism and the theist-atheist divide and all that goes into all of that. And what the term that I'd come up with over time, I'll go ahead, since this is going to be an unpacking of this concept, I'm going to go ahead and just fully unpack it. The way it landed was axial theism, meaning the central God belief. It's the central or the core of all God beliefs. This had occurred to me as part of this download I speak of. The download, the direct experience scenario that I came out of was something of a download turned into this as well, which is eventually was axial theism. The download part was just understanding that there is such a thing as a central God belief, and then to unpack that intellectually, that comes in from the intuitive mind as information from the Omni mind, from the all mind. Unpacking it intellectually turned into this axial theism. So I'm going to go through how that kind of unpacking works. An understanding, a revelation, a download of information comes in, and something is understood. And it may not be understood by the intellect, right? It's known intuitively, but then it has to be known next in order somehow by the intellect, or the intellect has to have an indirect or metaphorical way of relating to what is essentially mystical insight. Direct experience is what mysticism and mystical insight is. So I realized that there is a central God belief, and what it is that an eternal living mind is all. Omni means all. Omni, eternal living mind. This is what the supreme gods of mythology point to. And the God of monotheism is a collaboration of all of that consolidated into one kind of understanding. The older polytheisms gave way eventually to a monotheism. And what I've been bringing out through all of this series of talks is that the way that you understand monotheism correctly is in a panentheistic way. The one God is all, is wholly transcendent and wholly eminent, as it says in the Nicene creeds of Christianity. But people, they'll do lip service to that, but then they'll turn around and self-contradict it on their next breath to try and play games and be dualistic and polarized about things. We're like, well, yeah, but I got to be polarized. No, you have to put this understanding first, and then have your polarized vision accord with what is true. That's the way it works. You don't do it the other way around. You don't make the truth bend to your personal ego's polarized mind. That's not the way it works. So anyways, this was all very clear, and I realized there is such a thing as a central God belief, and it's common to all mythological traditions, and all popular world religions are built up on the backs of primitive mythologies. So this is across the board kind of thing. The name I came up with first was nucleotheism to try to express this, because I was thinking of the nucleus, like the center of things, the core of everything. That was the sentiment that came out of the download experience. To put it into words, that's the way it was going in words. But I thought I met some resistance with that, because nucleo sounds like nuclear. And when I started talking about it, there was some good feedback. Somebody had said, made a joke about, the old Charlton Heston Planet of the Apes. There was a, well, it shouldn't be a spoiler, but here's spoiler alert. Turns out that the people were underground worshiping a nuclear bomb the whole time. It's like nucleo-theism. He's like, it kind of sounds like a bomb worshiping cult. So I was like, all right, that ain't gonna work. But the idea needs expressed nonetheless. So I went back to the drawing board, and I consulted with my youngest stepson, about it. I was like, this is the concept, and here's what it means, and looking for a better way of expressing it. And he just started looking on the phone, and he says, Axial-Theism, call it that. So I was like, you know what? I like that. So Axial-Theism it is. That's the name that got landed on to unpack this insight intellectually. So it makes a lot of sense too. I'm going to go ahead and pack what sense it makes. So next in order, I've targeted that it is Panexperiential. The eternal living mind, that's Omni, or all, everything, is non-local. Science has been getting into non-locality. I've been cross-referencing the science of non-locality as we talk about these mystical issues. This leads to this, Panexperiential. And I've talked about Panexperiential idealism as part of the experiential realism talk. The way that it hits the idealisms is it makes it Panexperiential. Somehow or another, experience is involved at every level within the idealist all is mind paradigm. That's what that means. Panexperiential idealism. There, even in analytic idealism, there's still a way of applying Panexperiential insight, informing power into the analytic idealism, as I've argued. Mind at large is itself Panexperiential. As it's staring at its, interacting with itself from across dissociated boundaries in perspective, things that look like external objects in space are just mental energies within mind at large, and mind at large is so whatever you're seeing as external to you is some kind of experiential entity of mind at large itself. It may look like a space rock, but the core of it is core subjectivity, and so core subjectivity is Panexperiential. So I'm going to unpack why that is, if you understand that kind of lingo, idealist lingo. The way this works from a religious sense would be God is Panexperiential. It's simple. Is there anything that God isn't experiencing? If God is Omni, non-local mind, eternal, living mind, everywhere, all at once, all the time, timeless, eternal, God is understood as Panexperiential that way. Through philosophy of mind, it's as I just said. And in science, when we look at the unified quantum field, quantum mechanics, fields theory, that's Panexperiential. If we realize that, if we don't visualize the unified quantum field as also an eternal living mind, the field itself has to be treated as an eternal living mind, or else the hard problem of consciousness. So if no hard problem, let's go this way. Primary consciousness, which is this. That makes the unified quantum field Panexperiential. All experiences are contained within it because it is an eternal living mind. There's life. Life exists right now in the moment because eternal living mind. That's why. As an extension of this, it doesn't come from nothing. It comes from something, and the something is this, and it's the central God belief. It's axial-theistic. It applies across the board to all people. That's the point of this. That is the point of this insight. So further in this, run of talks here on the channel, I've voiced out. More recently, I've taken aim on Hermetic Reformed Christianity, and I brought up the final Reformation, the concept of, let's say, reinterpreting an existing concept that's been called the final Reformation, where Protestants and others have speculated about what might be further beyond the Protestant Reformation, and people have different ideas of what that might be. This is the way that I visualize this. This is the way I interpret it, based on all of, this building block that I'm building off of firm truth, and then building a house upon the solid structure of stone, not sand, is what this is. And then building back from a proper foundation. That leads to this idea of the final Reformation being putting the original mystical direct experience meaning that Christianity had originally from the outset, as it was from the outset before it became a big popular public religion. That's the final Reformation, putting it back into its original context, because it's lost context. The argument is that Christianity has lost its original context, and the final Reformation would be to reinstate its original mystical, which is direct experience oriented context. That's what that is. Well, so that kind of opens a window for how Reformed Christians could consider themselves axial-theistic. You've grown up in, like me, you've probably grown up in Christianity. You might have been an atheist at times. Maybe you're spiritual but not religious. You could have gone any different ways. Maybe you're an atheist right now. This should be understandable to anybody. It's a way of just making it, whatever your perspective, this all should be understandable. It was mystical. And if you're an atheist, all that means is that your own personal consciousness. This isn't something spooky. This isn't actually woo-woo in the end. This is, consciousness is what exists. You are experiencing consciousness all the time. You have to be conscious to doubt things. If you're doubting that you're conscious, you have to be conscious in order to doubt that you're so for atheists and agnostics, this is where it's going to go. When it's understood that it's consciousness that we're talking about, and consciousness itself acts as omni, non-local, like an eternal living mind. Now, this whole God thing takes a different turn. It isn't what Pastor Jim Bob from the Corner Baptist Church had to say about it. It's not that at all. It's something totally different. So if you think you can go down and argue with Cletus and win, that doesn't mean anything, because Cletus isn't representing the actual Christian faith in the grand scheme of things, or a false caricature, a false representation of God, of Jesus, of all of these things. It's an incomplete caricature paraded around that doesn't hit the depth of what this stuff really is. So if you are agnostic atheist, I think that what I'm talking about here should be understandable, because I've made it intellectual. I'm appealing to logic. I'm appealing to reason with this, while at the same time directing all of the attention to the transcendent and to what is essentially direct experience. People are going to look at what they were doing in early Christianity, which was very mystical, and like meditation, astral travel, like St. Paul is talking about things that are essentially astral travel. But when you understand those things from a modern perspective of consciousness, they kind of make sense. So this is what I mean to do here. And I really talk into those people, because those are the people that kind of really need this awakening. The religious that are giving the false impressions of God and Jesus and everything else, they need an awakening too. But they sort of get the fact that there's more going on than what you see or what it appears. They don't understand. They don't understand it as deep as it can be understood, But they get that. So when you're on the agnostic atheist side and things are nihilistic and whatnot, but these, I'm trying to, at least attempt to get through to some of these people out there and maybe open your mind a little bit more to that there's more than the way things appear at face value. There's something more going on. And what it is going to come down to your own personal consciousness. And we can understand this as being the really embedded meaning of the central God belief in the world, of all beliefs, including the Christian, and I'll get into all that. The inward path itself, part of this Reformed Christian view, because it's like, well, how can a Christian be an axial theist? Well, I'm going to cover that, and then I'll talk about the others. This way. It's Hermetic Reformed Christianity. It doesn't. The people that wrote these scriptures were Hermetic thinkers. And that meant Neoplatonic, it meant Gnostic, and not any particular sect. There's different kinds of Gnostics. It's just all kinds of Gnostics, all kinds of the mystics of all variety is what I mean by Hermetic Reformed Christian. Hermetic is broad spectrum. All of our Western scriptures have a Hermetic core. So that has to be part of the core of the central God belief. It can't be left out. And it's actually central to it. It must be there. So it is the inward path itself is the mystical realization that all these world religions, including Christianity, have at their core, have at their base. It is the inward path that is, the path itself is the way, the truth, and the life. No one goes to ultimate reality but by me. It's an allegory about the mind. Consciousness and mind is what is spiritual. That's what's spiritual about anything. The inward path is understanding that. I'm going to go ahead and just draw a little thing here. You've got you would have, the all mind. You would have the right hemisphere, and you have the left hemisphere, or the intellect. And this is the flow from the higher to the lower, from the spiritual realms to the physical looking, or the material looking realm. There's a way of thinking about it. And those verses where Jesus is talking like this, he's talking as the middle voice, the right hemisphere. So, which is magnetic, electric, magnetic, and I'm going to put neutral over here on the all. This would be God mind. This would be intuitive mind, which is nature mind, like the mind of the earth, the mind of nature, the feminine mind, the goddess mind is this. The masculine mind, the hunter, the laborer, So when we get in the world of toil and physicality is this. When Jesus is talking like this in these scriptures, these Hermetic scriptures, the symbolic value of this is to understand it in this way. And I'm the way, the truth, and the life. Well, Jesus is talking about the middle path between the God mind and the intellect, the mediator. And this is why Jesus is known as the mediator, and why Buddha is known as the middle way. When they're in the boat and the disciples are fishing on the left side of the boat, they're not catching anything, and he says, cast your nets on the other side. They go over to the right. Well, then they have abundance. Well, manifesting abundance from the infinite through the intuitive, the right, cast your nets on the right, and you'll be catching the abundance that comes from infinite mind this way. The flow. This is the downward, the descending spirit from the upper realms to the lower. Neutral, the feminine, the masculine. That's the way that works. That is what is embedded in all of these sort of verses. And like, I am the way, the truth, and the life. This is the way, the truth, and the life. This is life itself. This is eternal living mind. And the way to that from the intellect is this way. Coming back. This is why we have the interlocked triangles. It's the downward flow and the upward flow are interlocked. That's what's going on there. That's what all that symbolism is. The casting your nets on the other side is another allegory for the same. There's stuff everywhere throughout the New Testament that is alluding to this flow and these. When Jesus says I this and I that, he's speaking as the middle voice. This is what we call the mystical realization, and they have it in a lot of different religions. They have it in different religions. This is going to lead into everything being all-inclusive spirituality, because it's not limited to just one, it's everything. Everybody has this mystical realization. In Christianity, it comes through this message, through this messenger, through this way of... People have perverted this greatly and tried to say that this means that there's only one true religion. No, that means there's one truth. And that one truth can itself be within all religions. People have greatly misinterpreted this in ways that are like selfish and exclusionary, self-centered, blind ego. Oh, only my religion's right. Nobody else has it. No, everybody's wrong but me. But that's not what the purpose of this was by the Hermetics. And to Hermetic Reform Christianity, this has to be corrected back to its correct Hermetic understandings, which is this. So that's part of the final Reformation, where the Christians are concerned. Now I'm going to spread out and talk about everybody. How does Axial-Theism apply across the board? Because I'm saying that it applies to Hindus, Buddhists, Jews, Christians, Muslims, and the secularists, the agnostic-atheists, everybody. Nobody's left out on this. It's all inclusive. Because the belief is a non-traditional way of approaching belief with Axial-Theism. It's very non-traditional. What is it? I'm going to ask the question, what is it that we're believing in? What is it? It's not something external. It's not something separate. It's something eternal, living. It's something that's mind, and it's omni, which means non-local. It's reality itself. It's existence itself. That's why it applies to everybody. It's you. So it's a belief about reality. That's what it is. What is it that you believe about reality? Well, the axial theistic way of approaching God belief is that God is existence itself. Existence itself works as an eternal living mind. All present, omni everything, and it means non-local. The Hindus already have this. This is basically what Brahman means, put in different terms. Brahman is the central god of all the gods, and it's eternal living mind. It's the core subjectivity that gives subjectivity to all the other demigods and human beings and everything else in these pantheons. They already have it. It's just a recognition of what's already there. You don't have to convert to anything. This is where this is headed. This is not a sense of let's convert from this one to that one to there to become true and right. The idea is that if we pay attention, we can see the truth there, and there. You see it everywhere because it's everything. It's existence itself. It's waking up to what existence itself actually is and has always been, which is what you are and what you have always been. Whatever exists is existence itself incarnate. having the experience of an incarnate being. It is you are the universe having a human experience. That means you are God having a human experience. This all comes together. It all makes coherent sense. Buddhists have run off of Hinduism, and they understand all of this mostly already as it is. They're not the ones that are so confused about these things. It's very easy for a Hindu or a Buddhist to understand this here, Axial-Theism, and understand that there is a core to all the religions, because they haven't misinterpreted things in dualistic, polarized ways that are pure ego. It's pure ego is what drives somebody to think to misinterpret something like I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one goes to the Father but through me, as ego. That it's not an ego statement. That's not what it was meant to be. It was meant to be not beyond ego, integrated ego, beyond blind ego. They couldn't have perverted the meaning any worse. We don't have that problem here so much. People didn't pervert the old mystical meanings. They left them at pretty much as they stand. They got perverted over here in the West, so we have work to do. But we can see the way through the perversion. We can see how to correct this. Jews, there's non-dual Jews. There are mystical Jews already as it stands. There are mystical Christians now as it stands. There have been. It's just not popular. Not yet. It's getting more popular. Same with Muslims. Always been mystical Muslims. Different kinds. So, as far as the religious, we can make this connection pretty easy, you know, for the Jews, Christians, and Muslims. There's all kinds of non-dual insight in the Bible that was seeded in there by the Hermetic writers that originally wrote both the Old and New Testaments. They put it all in there. But it's heavy, it's symbolic, it's heavily symbolized, in these ways. But it's there. I mean, just, the Star of David, the Seal of Solomon alone symbolizes this, what we're talking about. So it's there. It's always been there. Just not been understood. The idea is to have a greater understanding now, today. I'll kind of come down to how this impacts the secular world now, because that's probably where I have to have the most attention. As far as this goes, you don't need to become a Buddhist, or you don't need to go run and become a Hindu. You don't have to go become a Jew if you're a Christian, or a Christian if you're no. We're getting past all of that. When you understand that this is the mystical path itself, then you just take aim on the mystical path. This is why it involves secularists, because you don't even have to belong to any of these to understand the meaning of this. What this actually means is way beyond things like organized religion, way beyond things like academic philosophy, way beyond things like any academic science, any academic, soft sciences, anything that's academic, anything that's left hemisphere and intellectual. And what people have to realize is that traditional theism is intellectual, pointing towards spiritual, but it's symbolic because it's intellectual. It's words, it's letters, it's numbers. Those are all symbols. Those are all indirect symbols that can only serve to point to direct experience, which is what I'm arguing they were doing originally. They were putting that emphasis on the direct experience, looking back this way towards source, inward. When it says in Luke, the kingdom of the Father is within you, it's the intellect looking into intuition, and then further into source, core subjectivity, the core of everything. You don't have to say, oh, I'm a Reformed Hermetic Christian, or I'm a Hindu, or there's no reason for anybody to have to feel compelled to be one of these named, titled, religious types. You could be just the way you are, secular as it is, not believing in all of this stuff literal the way it's been taught. Maybe just understanding that it was symbolic originally, so at least you understand that you're looking at symbolism, and the symbolism points to consciousness. If you understand that and you consider yourself secular, then you understand the point that we're trying to make anyways. And it's just a distraction because there's been so much bad content associated with all of these popular religions. You don't have to. All I'm saying is that people neither have to feel compelled to leave the popular religions, nor do they have to feel like if you're secular, it's not like you need to become religious or something. You don't. All you need to do is just understand the point of what's being said. That's it. If you get the point, then you get it. The point is in you. You don't need a church. You don't need people. You don't need a social situation. You just need to understand the truth of what's inside of you as a person. And if you're in the secular world and you prefer that, by understanding this, it doesn't necessarily have to take you back out of that. If you get it, then you get it. That's the way this works. That's why Axial-Theism, and you could be part of the central God belief, because you believe that God is a metaphor. It isn't to be taken literally, and you've always known that because you're atheist. You're arguing that it's not literally true. Well, yes, it's symbolic though, and it's symbolic of consciousness. So if you get that much about it, then you get it. This is how I've opened this thing up intellectually to where it's all inclusive and really nobody's left out. And this is the way that the download sort of unpacked itself through the intellectual mind. The way that downloads happen. They come in from the ether of all mind, in through the intuitive mind, the goddess per se, and then into the intellect, the solar masculine. That's the way it works. All of this information, it came to me. It didn't come from nowhere. It came from somewhere. And it points to something. And where it points to is here. To the all. As I've been saying, street name, God. If you understand that and you're secular, then you understand, then you get it. There's not something more that you need to get. And if you get that it's about you and what's in you and the source of ultimate reality and you being one with that ultimate reality, then you understand the truth about God. And you don't need to convert to something. So that's my big point here. I wanted to do a very targeted video on Axial-Theism to explain just what it is in detail.